You wake up every day at the same time, catch the same crowded bus, work the same 8 hours or more, come home exhausted, look at your bank statement, and see practically the same number as always. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but always hovering around that same range that never seems to get you anywhere. You're not lazy. You work hard, sometimes at 2 jobs. You wake up early, sleep late, put in overtime when you can. But at the end of the month, after all the bills are paid, after you've bought the bare minimum to get by, there's that paltry amount left over that disappears with the first emergency. And there's always an emergency, isn't there? The car tire blew out, the kid got sick, the fridge died, a tooth broke, always something that eats up the little you managed to save. And then you look around and see people who seem to be getting ahead, people who started at the same time as you, sometimes with even less. But today, they're on another level, driving better cars, living in better neighborhoods, taking vacations, planning for the future. And you're left wondering what you're doing wrong. Are you not smart enough? Are you not trying hard enough? Were you just not born lucky? I've spent decades studying this question, not in an academic or detached way, but by observing closely, talking to people, analyzing patterns, understanding the invisible mechanisms that keep someone stuck in place while others manage to break free. And today, I want to share with you the hardest and most liberating truth I've discovered on this subject. Most people never escape poverty. And it's not because they're lazy, dumb, or unlucky. It's because they don't understand that poverty isn't a state. Poverty is a system so well designed, so perfectly calibrated that a person can work their entire life, strive every day, do everything right within what they know, and still never get anywhere. You see, when most people think of poverty, they think of a lack of money. If I don't have money, I'm poor. If I earn more money, I stop being poor. Simple as that. But that's a dangerous illusion, because I've seen people making $1,000 a month who were poor. And I've seen people who started making $5,000 a month and remained poor. I've seen people who inherited $50,000 and within 2 years were back where they started. The money came in, the money went out, and the poverty remained. So what's going on here? Let me explain something that completely changed how I understand this phenomenon. Poverty works exactly like gravity. Not metaphorical gravity, but real gravity, the physical force Newton described. When you're in a strong gravitational field, you need an absurd amount of energy just to escape. Scientists call this escape velocity. To escape Earth's gravity, an object needs to reach approximately 7 miles per second. Not 6, not 6.5. 7. If you reach 6.9 miles per second, you know what happens? You go up, 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 slow down, stop, and come back down. You fall again. No matter how much effort you made, no matter that you almost made it, you didn't reach escape velocity, so you fall back into the gravitational field. And that's exactly what happens with poverty. There's a financial escape velocity, a specific threshold you need to cross to truly leave the gravitational field of poverty. And most people spend their entire lives accelerating, but never reach that threshold. They go up a little, get a raise, save some money, feel like they're progressing, and then something happens. An emergency, an unexpected expense, a market shift, and they fall back down. And the cycle begins again. But here's the crucial point that almost no one understands. It's not just about having more money. It's about understanding the forces acting upon you. Because the gravitational field of poverty isn't just made of a lack of resources. It's made of structures, habits, decisions, thought systems, and practical realities that reinforce each other, creating such an intense force that keeping the person in place becomes the path of least resistance. Let me show you how this works in practice. Imagine someone making $2,000 a month. They pay $1,200 for rent, utilities, and gas. $800 is left. They spend $400 on food. $400 is left. They spend $200 on transportation to get to work. $200 is left. They have a child in school who needs supplies, a uniform, lunch. That's another $150. $50 left. $50 a month of wiggle room. And then the car tire blows out, or the phone breaks, or the blood pressure medication runs out and needs to be bought. And that $50 evaporates. Nothing is left. Sometimes debt is left. Now, this person decides they're going to get out of this situation. They're going to save. They're going to put money aside. They're going to invest. So they cut costs. They stop buying that little coffee that brought a moment of joy to their day. They stop buying the better cut of meat and start buying the cheaper kind. They stop going out on weekends with the family. Cut, cut, cut. And they managed to save $100 a month. In a year, they've saved $1,200. They're proud. For the first time in their life, they have a reserve, but then the refrigerator breaks, or the car needs an urgent repair because without the car, they can't work, or the child gets sick and needs treatment that Medicare doesn't cover fast enough. And that $1,200 that took a whole year of sacrifice disappears in a week. The person is back to zero. And here's the devastating part. It's not just the money they lost, it's the hope. It's the belief that it's possible to get out. Because they did everything right. They saved, they sacrificed, they accumulated, and it didn't help. Life ate it all up. So they conclude, often without even realizing they're concluding, that there's no point in trying, that the system is designed for people like them to stay where they are, that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and there's nothing they can do. And that conclusion, that silent resignation, is the most powerful fuel for the gravitational field of poverty. Because when you stop trying to escape, you guarantee you'll never escape. Now, let me tell you something very few people know. There's a fascinating study conducted by Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir, two behavioral economics researchers, one from Harvard and the other from Princeton. They spent years studying what they called the psychology of scarcity. And they discovered something shocking. Scarcity isn't just a lack of resources. Scarcity changes how your brain works, literally. When you're operating on fumes with no wiggle room, when every decision is about immediate survival, your brain shifts into a different gear. You become hyper-focused on the problem right in front of you and lose the ability to think long-term, to plan, to spot opportunities. They did an experiment. They took people from different income levels and administered IQ tests and executive function tests. But before testing one group, they induced scarcity. They made people think about an urgent financial problem, a big bill that needed paying, an expensive car repair. You know what happened? The average IQ of the people dropped 13 points. 13 points. That's the difference between someone with average intelligence and someone with a learning disability. Not because they got dumber, but because all their cognitive capacity was being consumed by the immediate problem. They had no leftover mental bandwidth to think about anything else. Now, let's translate that to real life. Someone living on the edge, constantly worried about how they'll pay the next bill, how they'll put food on the table, how they'll fix what's broken, is operating with 13 points of IQ less all the time. Are they dumber? No. Their mental bandwidth is completely consumed by scarcity. And then you understand why bad decisions happen, why someone takes out that loan with absurd interest rates, why they buy that refrigerator on an installment plan that will eat up half their paycheck for the next 12 months, why they can't plan, can't see the traps, can't think strategically. It's not stupidity. It's not a lack of character. It's cognitive scarcity. Their brain is operating in survival mode, and in survival mode, you don't think about next year. You think about today. You think about now. You make the decision that solves the immediate problem, even if that decision sinks you deeper in the long run. And so, the cycle perpetuates. Poverty breeds scarcity. Scarcity reduces cognitive capacity. Reduced cognitive capacity leads to bad decisions. Bad decisions generate more poverty. And the gravitational pull gets stronger and stronger. But there's more. There's something even more insidious about this system. Being poor is expensive. I know it sounds contradictory, but it's the brutal truth of modern economics. The less money you have, the more you pay for everything. Let me give you concrete examples. A wealthy person buys a car outright. They negotiate, get a discount, pay with cash or a wire transfer, and drive the car home. A poor person doesn't have the cash to buy it up front. So, they finance it. They pay a down payment, interest, an origination fee, a more expensive mandatory insurance because the financing requires full coverage. In the end, they pay double the car's value. The same car the wealthy person paid $50,000 for, the poor person pays $100,000 for over the course of the loan. But it doesn't stop there. The wealthy person buys groceries in bulk. They go to Costco once a month, buy in volume, get a better price, stock up at home. The poor person doesn't have space to stock up. They don't have a big refrigerator. They don't have the money to buy in bulk. So they buy at the corner convenience store every day, paying more per unit. They pay 30% more for the same food the wealthy person buys at wholesale. The wealthy person has a bank account with benefits. They don't pay maintenance fees. They have a credit card with a rewards program, with cash back, with no annual fee if they spend a minimum amount they naturally spend. The poor person has a basic account. They pay fees for everything. They pay to withdraw. They pay to transfer. They pay to get a replacement card. If they're late on a bill and pay it at the bank, they pay a bill payment fee. If they need emergency credit, they pay 20% monthly interest on their overdraft or credit card line. Do you see the pattern? The person who can least afford to pay is the one who pays the most. The entire system is designed to extract more from those who have less. And this isn't a conspiracy. It's not intentional malice. It's simply the logic of the market operating without moral friction. Those with less money represent more risk to the lender, so they charge more interest. Those who buy in smaller quantities don't generate economies of scale, so they pay more per unit. Those who lack the margin to negotiate accept the terms they're offered, and so being poor becomes a constant tax, a daily bleeding of resources that prevents exactly the accumulation needed to escape poverty. So the person works, pays more for everything, has no margin left, cannot accumulate, cannot invest, cannot build escape velocity, and the gravitational pull keeps them exactly where they are. Now, I want to pause here, because I know what I'm describing might be resonating deeply with you. If you're living this right now, if you recognize this pattern in your own life, if you've ever felt that sense of running on a treadmill without getting anywhere, I want you to do something. Type in the comments, I recognize this cycle. It's not just for you. It's because when you do that, when you put it into words, you take that weight out of the shadows and bring it into the light. And other people going through the same thing will read it and realize they're not alone. that this isn't an individual failing, that this is a system. And recognizing the system is the first step to learning how to work against it. So go ahead, comment now. I read them all, and I promise you're not alone in this. Now comes the question that matters. If the system is so strong, if the gravitational pull is so intense, if everything is working against you, how on earth does anyone escape? Because people do escape. Not many, but they escape. And it's not just the lucky ones. It's not just those who inherited money or won the lottery. There are people who started exactly where you are, trapped in the same gravitational pull, and managed to get out. How? Let me tell you what I've learned by observing these people over decades. First, they understand they can't play the same game. That's the fundamental insight. If you're trapped in the gravity of poverty and try to do what everyone else is doing, you'll get the same results as everyone else. Working more hours at the same job won't get you out. Saving 5% of your salary won't get you out. Not because those things are useless, but because the math doesn't work. If you earn $2,000 and save $100 a month, in 10 years, you have $12,000. Minus inflation, minus the emergencies that will eat into that, you have maybe $8,000 or $9,000. That doesn't change your life. It doesn't create escape velocity. It keeps you in the same place with a slightly larger cushion. So, what works? What works is drastically increasing the value you generate, not the hours you work. The value. Because in the end, money is a measure of perceived value. The more value you can deliver to the market, the more the market pays you. And here's the point most people completely miss. Value isn't about working hard. Working hard is the baseline. Everyone works hard. The construction worker works hard. The janitor works hard. The delivery driver works hard. And many of them stay poor because hard work without strategic direction doesn't generate enough value. Value is about solving problems the market cares about. It's about developing skills that are scarce and in demand. It's about positioning yourself where your contribution makes a measurable difference. Let me give you a practical example. Someone working in customer service at a brick-and-mortar store earns minimum wage or a bit above. Why? Because anyone with basic training can do that job. The labor supply is massive, so the pay is low. Now, take that same person and teach them to do customer service via chat in English for international companies. Suddenly, the labor supply plummets. How many people in the U.S. speak fluent English and know how to provide excellent customer service? Far fewer. So the market value of that skill goes up. The same person doing essentially the same type of work can earn 3-4 times more, not because they work harder, but because they're offering something that's scarcer and more valued. Or take another situation, someone who knows how to fix cell phones. There are 1,000 people who know how to fix cell phones in your town. Brutal competition, tight margins, squeezed prices. Now, that person learns to recover data from phones that won't turn on anymore. They learn reverse engineering of flash memory. They learn to solder components on motherboards. Suddenly, they're not competing with 1,000 people. They're competing with 5. And they charge 10 times more for the service. Same knowledge base, different application, completely different perceived value. Are you seeing the pattern? Escaping poverty isn't about working more. It's about working differently. It's about moving to a place in the market where your skill is scarce enough to be well paid. And that requires investment. It requires time. It requires focused effort to learn things most people aren't willing to learn. And here lies one of the cruelest paradoxes of poverty. To escape, you need to invest in yourself. You need to study, train, develop skills. But studying and training requires time and money. And time and money are exactly what you don't have when you're stuck in the gravity of poverty. You're working 10, 12 hours a day just to make ends meet. When you get home, you're exhausted. The last thing you want to do is sit down and study programming, English, digital marketing, whatever it is. You want to rest. You deserve to rest. But resting keeps you where you are. So the people who escape do something radically different. They create margin no matter what. They cut not 5%, but 20, 30% from their expenses. They move to a cheaper place. They sell the car and start using public transport. They eat rice and beans every day. They cut cable internet, streaming, everything non-essential, and they use that saved time and money to invest in skills. They study at dawn. They study on the bus. They study during their lunch break. They take free online courses. They watch YouTube tutorials. They read books from the public library. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They work with what they have. And here's the hard truth. This hurts. This is real sacrifice. It's not the romantic sacrifice of a motivational movie. It's sacrifice that means giving up things that bring immediate comfort. It's sacrifice that means your kids asking why you don't go out to eat anymore. It's sacrifice that means your friends calling you to hang out and you saying no because you're studying. It's sacrifice that means spending months, sometimes years, living on an even tighter budget than before, betting that this investment will pay off in the future. And there's no guarantee. That's the scariest part. You can do everything right, study, get qualified, develop valuable skills, and still not get the opportunity immediately. The market might not recognize your value right away. You might need to try 10, 20 times before landing that job, that client, that contract that changes everything. But here's the point. Without trying, the probability of success is zero. With trying, the probability is greater than zero. It might be 5%. It might be 10. It might be 20. But it's greater than zero. And when you're stuck in the gravity of poverty, greater than zero is infinitely better than zero. Now, there's another aspect I need to mention. People who escape don't do it alone. They understand that social capital is as important as financial capital. They cultivate relationships. They connect with people who are 1, 2 rungs above them. They ask for help. They offer value first without expecting anything in return. They build a reputation because opportunities don't appear out of nowhere. Opportunities come through people. That freelance gig comes because someone referred you. That job that wasn't publicly advertised comes because someone remembered you. That well-paying client comes because someone spoke highly of your work. And building these connections requires social skill, requires presence, requires strategic generosity. It requires you to be memorable for the right reasons. But there's a huge obstacle here. When you're poor, you feel shame. You feel like you don't belong in certain spaces. You feel like you have nothing to offer. You withdraw. You avoid events, avoid conversations, avoid exposing yourself because you're afraid of being judged, of being seen as inferior, of being rejected. And this social withdrawal isolates you from the very networks that could help you get out. So people who escape learn to overcome this shame. They go to events even in simpler clothes. They strike up conversations even when they feel they don't have the credentials. They ask for advice, ask for feedback, ask for referrals. They put themselves in environments where more successful people are, not to ask for money, not to ask for favors, but to absorb mindset, to observe how these people think, how they make decisions, how they see opportunities. And slowly, through repeated exposure, the mindset starts to shift. If you're constantly surrounded by people who think small, who complain, who blame the system, You'll think small, complain, and blame the system. But if you surround yourself, even marginally, with people who think big, who look for solutions, who see possibilities, you start thinking that way too. And a shift in mindset is the true beginning of a shift in reality. Now, I need to talk about something extremely important, something that can make all the difference between being stuck and getting out. Risk management. You see, when you have financial breathing room, you can take risks. You can try a new business knowing that if it fails, you have 6 months of reserves. You can quit a bad job to look for a better one, knowing you can handle the transition. But when you have no margin, any risk can be catastrophic. Losing your job means not being able to pay rent next month. It means eviction. It means desperation. So, people in poverty avoid risk, and avoiding risk makes sense in the short term. It protects you from immediate disaster. But in the long run, avoiding all risk guarantees, you'll never get ahead. Because climbing the ladder always involves some level of risk. It always involves trading present security for future possibility. So what do people who break free do differently? They take calculated risks, not crazy risks, not betting everything on red and hoping for the best, but risks where they've maximized the probability of success before taking the leap. They study until they have real confidence in their skills. They test on a small scale before scaling up. They land their first client before quitting their job. They build the ladder while they're still on the ground, and when they take the leap, it's not a blind jump. It's a calculated step based on evidence and preparation. But it's still a leap. It's still a risk, and that risk is what separates those who stay from those who leave. Let me give you a real-life example of someone I've observed over the years. A young man who worked as a freelance delivery driver. He made about $400 a month, working 10, 12 hours a day. He had a high school diploma, but no special qualifications. He was stuck. But he noticed something. He noticed that many of the restaurants he delivered for had issues with order management, messy paperwork, frequent errors, wasted time. So he did something simple. He went to the public library and taught himself Excel. He didn't pay for a course. He watched free YouTube videos. He practiced on his own until he got good. Then he created simple order tracking spreadsheets. And he offered one to a smaller restaurant he delivered for free. The owner accepted. The spreadsheet worked. It organized the chaos. It reduced errors. The owner was thrilled and mentioned it to other restaurant owners. Suddenly, this young man had 3-4 small restaurants wanting his spreadsheets. He started charging $50 per customized spreadsheet. Nothing extravagant, but it was enough. In 6 months, he had 15 clients. $3 or $0 a month in extra income doing something that took an hour or 2 per client. He kept working as a delivery driver, but now he had margin. He used that margin to study more. He learned basic coding. He learned how to create automated systems. And a year and a half later, he had a micro business providing automation solutions for small restaurants. He was making $2 a month. He quit deliveries, hired a helper, and he was out. He escaped the gravitational pull, not by luck, not by inheritance, but because he saw a small opportunity, developed a specific skill, tested it in the real world, built a reputation, and scaled up. And the most important thing, he started while he was still at the bottom. He didn't wait to have money to invest. He invested time. He invested attention. He invested effort. And he used free resources that were available. Now comes the part many people don't want to hear. Not everyone will escape. Even doing everything right. Even putting in the effort. Even developing skills. Because the system isn't fair. Because there are real structural barriers. Because there's discrimination. because there's inequality of opportunity, because a black person and a white person with the same qualifications aren't treated the same way in the market, because someone from the inner city and someone from a wealthy suburb don't have the same network, because a single mother with 3 kids doesn't have the same time availability as someone single without dependents. All these things are real. All these things weigh heavily, and pretending they don't exist is dishonest. But here's the equally important truth. Recognizing that the system is unfair doesn't change the system. Recognizing that there are barriers doesn't remove the barriers. You still have to work with a reality that exists, not the reality you wish existed. And the reality is, you have 2 options. You accept that you're stuck and resign yourself to it, or you fight to get out, knowing it's hard, knowing it's unfair, knowing you'll have to work harder than others, knowing you'll face obstacles others don't. And you do it anyway, because the alternative is staying. And staying means accepting that your entire life will be defined by scarcity, by lack of choice, by living on the edge. And that's not acceptable, at least not to me, and I hope not to you. So let me recap what I've said here, because it's important you leave this conversation with clarity on what truly matters. First, poverty isn't a lack of money. Poverty is a gravitational system of resource scarcity, cognitive scarcity, increased costs, lack of margin, and reinforcing structural barriers. Second, this system is designed intentionally or not to keep people where they are. Being poor is expensive. Scarcity reduces your ability to make good decisions. Lack of margin prevents you from taking the necessary risks to grow. Third, escaping this system isn't about working harder. It's about working differently. It's about increasing the value you generate in the market by developing scarce and valuable skills. It's about repositioning yourself. It's about creating margin, even if it means brutal sacrifice in the short term. Fourth, no one escapes alone. You need connections. You need social capital. You need to put yourself in environments where more successful people are and learn from them. You need to overcome shame and ask for help, ask for advice, ask for feedback. Fifth, you need to take calculated risks, not crazy risks, but risks where you've laid the groundwork, tested on a small scale, and maximize your chance of success. And then you need the courage to take the leap even without a guarantee. And sixth, the system is unfair. There are real barriers. There are structural inequalities. But complaining about injustice without taking action changes nothing. You work with the reality you have and do your best within it, even if it's harder for you than for others. Now, I want to say something that might sound harsh, but it needs to be said. Most people never escape poverty because, deep down, on a subconscious level, they choose not to. I know that sounds cruel. I know it sounds like victim blaming. But let me explain what I mean. Escaping poverty requires extreme sacrifice. It requires giving up immediate comfort for future possibility. It requires living on an even tighter budget while you invest in yourself. It requires studying when you're exhausted. It requires taking risks when you're afraid. It requires continuing to try after failing once, twice, 5 times. And many people, when confronted with this reality, when they see the sheer amount of effort required, make a decision. They decide it's not worth it, that the sacrifice is too great, that the probability of success is too slim, that it's safer, more comfortable to stay where they are and complain about the system's injustice. And look, I get it. I really do. It's not weakness. It's not laziness. It's a rational decision based on a cost-benefit analysis. If you're 35 with 3 kids making $2,000 a month and someone tells you you need to study coding until 2 a.m. for the next 2 years to have a shot at changing your life. I understand you looking at that and thinking, no, that you can't handle it, that you don't have the energy, that you need to take care of your mental health now, not mortgage your present for an uncertain future. But then you need to make peace with that decision. You need to accept that by choosing not to make the sacrifice, you're choosing to stay where you are. And there's no shame in that, as long as it's a conscious choice. The problem is when people make that choice unconsciously and then play the victim. When they say the system is rigged, that they have no opportunities, that they were born in the wrong place, but in reality, they're simply not willing to pay the price. Because here's the ultimate truth. Opportunity always comes with a price. There's no easy climb. There's no shortcut. And the lower you start, the higher the price. Is that unfair? Yes. Should it be different? Absolutely. But until it is, you have to decide. Do you pay the price or do you accept staying where you are? And both are valid choices. But only one of them gives you a chance to change your reality. So, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself when you answer. Do you truly want to get out of poverty? Or do you want it to be easy to get out of poverty? Because one is possible, the other is not. If you want it to be easy, you'll be waiting for a lottery win, an inheritance, a miracle that's not coming. But if you truly want out, regardless of how much effort it takes, then you have work to do. You have skills to develop. You have tough decisions to make. You have risks to take. And you start now, not tomorrow, not when conditions are better, now, with what you have. And here's the most important thing I can tell you. You are not alone. Thousands of people have made this journey before you, and most of them started with less than you have right now. They weren't smarter. They weren't luckier. They just decided to pay the price and kept paying until the system broke. And if they could do it, so can you. But you have to start. You have to take the first step. And the first step is always the same. Decide that you will not accept your current reality as permanent. Decide that you will learn what you need to learn, do what you need to do, sacrifice what you need to sacrifice. And then start. Learn a skill. Any skill the market values: Excel, English, coding, design, sales, video editing, whatever. Start it. And as you learn, you observe. You see where the opportunities are. You talk to people who are already where you want to be. You ask them how they did it. You absorb. And then you test. You offer your services for free at first if necessary, just to gain experience and build a portfolio. You fail, you learn, you adjust, and you keep going. And at some point, if you keep at it long enough, if you're consistent enough, if you refuse to quit, something shifts. You land that first paying client, or that better job, or that contract that finally gives you some breathing room. And with breathing room, you can think. And when you can think, you make better decisions. And better decisions lead to better outcomes. And slowly, month by month, you gain momentum. You build speed. And one day, you look back and realize you're out. You've escaped the gravitational pull. You're in a different orbit. And that doesn't mean you're rich. You might not be rich yet, but you're not poor anymore. You have choices now. You have options. You have control over your life. And that, my friend, that is freedom. Freedom isn't having everything. Freedom is having options. It's being able to choose where you live, what you eat, how you spend your time. It's being able to say no to things that don't serve you. It's being able to invest in yourself, in your family, in your future, without it meaning you can't eat. And that freedom, that feeling of having escaped, is worth every second of sacrifice. It's worth every late night studying. It's worth every no you said to social invitations. It's worth every moment of doubt and fear. Because in the end, you didn't just change your bank account, you changed who you are. You proved to yourself that you are capable, that you are not a victim, that you can create your reality instead of just accepting the one you were given. And that is the most profound transformation there is. So, what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to close this video, nod along, feel a motivational boost for 2 hours, and then go back to the same life? Or are you going to actually do something different? Because information without action is just entertainment. And you don't need more entertainment. You need transformation. And transformation starts with a decision that your current life is unacceptable, that you deserve more, that you will pay the necessary price to have more, and then action. Consistent, directed, relentless action, even when you don't feel like it, even when you're tired, even when it seems like it's not working, you keep going because you decided, and your decision is stronger than your circumstances. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, that tells me something very important about you. You're not like most people. You're not looking for a magic bullet or an easy way out. You're looking for truth. And the truth I share here on this channel every week is simple yet transformative. Money isn't luck. Money isn't a mystery. Money is the result of consistent decisions based on a deep understanding of how the system works. And my goal here is to give you that understanding, not with pretty theories or empty motivation, but with honest reflections, real observations, and wisdom accumulated over decades of studying how people create and destroy wealth. If you want to be part of a community that thinks this way, that refuses to accept poverty as destiny, that's willing to do the hard work of transforming your relationship with money, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Because every video I post here is designed to give you a piece of the puzzle. A piece that on its own might not change anything, but that, together with the others, forms a complete picture of how you get from where you are to where you want to be. You don't need me. But if you choose to follow along, I promise I'll give you the best I've got. No fluff, no selling snake oil, just hard, useful truth. See you in the next video. And remember, your life doesn't change when your circumstances change. Your life changes when you change.